My name is Elizabeth Griffin. Last week, I walked into a boardroom expecting to be named successor of Griffin Tech, the company I helped build from scratch with my father. Instead, I watched him hand everything to my younger sister, Kimberly, who once confused a firewall with a fireplace. Can you imagine being disinherited in front of your whole executive team, with no warning, no explanation, and no dignity? If you've ever had your loyalty repaid with betrayal, you'll want to hear this. And if you're watching this from your couch, your office, or maybe even your own version of a betrayal battlefield, drop your location in the comments. I want to know where warriors like us are watching from. The boardroom smelled like lemon polish and tension. I sat at the head of the table, spine straight, notes open, ready. After 10 years of climbing through product development, international expansion, and crisis after crisis, today was supposed to be the day. Dad stood at the front, flanked by 2 legal reps. His gray hair looked sharp against the navy of his tailored suit, but his eyes avoided mine. That was the first red flag. "Thank you for joining us," he began, his voice too casual for something this big. "I have an exciting announcement." I glanced at Kimberly. She was tapping her pink nails against the water glass, half bored, half smug. She never showed up for board meetings unless there were cameras involved. "As of today," Dad continued, clearing his throat, "Griffin Tech will transition to new ownership. Effective immediately, Kimberly will assume full executive control and 100% ownership of the company." I blinked, then I stared, then I laughed once too loudly. "You're kidding me," I said, the words flat but cracking at the end. Kimberly turned, all teeth and glint. "Surprise," she whispered, as if this was some twisted birthday party. I looked at Dad. "Tell me this is a misprint. A presentation typo, a prank." But he wouldn't meet my eyes. "It was a strategic decision," he mumbled. "For continuity, for fresh energy." My nails dug into the leather armrest. The room fell into stunned silence except for the subtle clicks of someone's pen and the shifting of suits against leather. "You made this decision without even talking to me," I said, louder now. "After everything I've done for this company, I ran operations during the pandemic. I secured the international patents. You were always capable, Liz," he interrupted, finally looking up, but not with pride, with caution. "But this was about next-generation vision." Kimberly tilted her head. "Don't be so dramatic. You always said legacy isn't given, it's earned." I stood. My chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. "You have no idea what you've just done," I said, my voice steady but my blood roaring. "She's never even opened the back-end systems. She doesn't know how our AI is trained. You're giving a loaded rocket to a toddler." Dad flinched. I gathered my notebook, though I couldn't remember a single thing I'd written on it. I looked around the table, some faces stunned, others carefully neutral. No one moved, and that was the second red flag. I pushed through the glass doors without another word. My heels echoed down the hallway, a rhythm of betrayal ringing louder than any applause I'd ever earned in this building. As the elevator doors closed, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. Eyes blazing, jaw tight, but no tears. Not here, not in front of them. Let them keep the company. For now, I wasn't finished. My apartment smelled like lavender and bourbon. A strange combination, but somehow it worked that night. I'd returned home on autopilot, riding the elevator to the 35th floor like a ghost in tailored heels. The city lights glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Austin pulsing with life, completely unaware that the Griffin dynasty had just cracked open like a rotten egg. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I changed into my favorite cotton tee, grabbed the bottle of Jefferson's Reserve from the bar cart, and sat cross-legged on the floor with my laptop. The resignation email practically typed itself. Short, cold, legally sound. "Dear Board, effective immediately." I paused over the next line. Do I say why? Do I call it what it was, betrayal? Nepotism? A joke in heels? No, that's not how you play the long game. I deleted the paragraph and typed something simpler. "Wishing you all continued success." Click, sent. I closed the laptop, took a sip, and let the bourbon spread like armor through my chest. My reflection in the glass window looked eerily calm, like a woman at the end of a war she never saw coming. But wars don't end. They shift. I walked to the whiteboard in my home office. the one I usually reserved for quarterly planning and client funnels. I erased everything. The ink stained my fingers like blood. In the center, I drew a single circle. EGC, I wrote, Elizabeth Griffin Consulting. It was the name I'd kept in my back pocket for years, a what if I never thought I'd need. Below it, I scribbled, autonomy, ethics, innovation. Then a line underneath that, no more thrones, only builders. My phone buzzed. Kimberly. Of course, Kimberly, don't be petty. This doesn't mean we can't work together. I stared at the screen, smirked, then turned off notifications completely. She'd get her silence, which from me would be louder than any reply. The next few hours were a flurry of tabs, Angel List, Crunchbase old contacts from Stanford, a few LinkedIn messages to VCs I knew respected my brain more than my last name. I wasn't pitching yet, but I was watching, listening. I still knew the game. And I wasn't done playing. At around 2 a.m., I wandered to the kitchen and made toast I didn't eat. The silence wrapped around me like a heavy coat. It's funny, the way a quiet apartment can feel louder than any boardroom. There were no clicks of pens, no rustling of suits, no Kimberly tapping her designer nails against glass. Just me, just space, just clarity. I thought about Dad. He used to sit me on his lap during conference calls when I was 5. Let me color graphs on his notepad, called it creative forecasting. I used to believe he was invincible, an empire of integrity in a pinstripe suit. Now, he couldn't even look me in the eye. Was it guilt? Or just the discomfort of watching his favorite finally outgrow the box he built for her? A ping interrupted my spiral. An old friend, Dana from grad school, responded to my message. Dana heard what happened. Their loss. Let me know when you're ready to raise. I've got a few names you'll want. I smiled. It was small, but it was real. That night I didn't fall asleep so much as collapse. No dreams, no nightmares, just rest. The kind that comes after a rupture. And when I woke up, something inside had hardened. Not bitterness. Not yet. Call it resolve. It had been 6 days. 6 days since the boardroom betrayal. 6 days since I walked out of Griffin Tech, leaving behind a company I'd poured my 20s into like it was a second bloodstream. 6 days since my name was stripped from the foundation I helped build, while Kimberly, the family's favorite glitter-drenched wildcard, slid into the CEO seat wearing one of her faux humble smiles. And yet, I was calm. I hadn't answered any calls from my father, hadn't opened the 2 vague emails from the board. I let the silence speak. The only sound in my apartment that morning was the steam hiss of my espresso machine and the soft jazz I played when I needed to think. I was lounging on the rooftop deck, still in my silk pajamas, laptop perched on my knees when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something, a flicker of instinct or maybe just curiosity, made me swipe. Elizabeth. The voice was tight, winded, familiar. Dad. He didn't even wait for me to respond. We lost Hartman Robotics, he said, breathless. 3 million gone. The contract's terminated. The CTO at Hartman pulled the plug this morning after the demo. I blinked, sat up straighter. What happened? I asked, though I already knew. Kimberly blew the AI demonstration. Live, there was a glitch. He hesitated, like he couldn't bring himself to say the rest. She launched the wrong version. Used beta software instead of the stable release. The AI couldn't process basic prompts. It froze mid-question. Then it misread a command as an override and shut down the entire simulation. I closed the laptop, suddenly more awake than caffeine alone could manage. You're telling me, I said slowly, that she crashed the most important deal of the year because she didn't know the build versions. It's more complicated than... No, it's exactly as complicated as that, I snapped. There was silence. I could hear him breathing. The CTO walked out during the presentation. In front of the board, he added, voice strained. It was humiliating. I stood and walked to the bar cart, pouring 2 fingers of bourbon into my coffee. Some habits die hard. You handed a jet engine to someone who barely knows how to start a car, I said flatly. And now you're calling the person you cut out, begging for sympathy. That's not Liz, please, he murmured. This isn't just about feelings, it's about the company. This could spiral. So spiral, I said, and the words felt like steel. Maybe it needs to. Elizabeth, I told you this would happen, I cut in. She's not a leader, Dad. She's a PR fantasy. You gambled with the only thing we built together, and now you want me to what? Save it? There was a beat. We need you. That part, at least, felt honest. I took a sip, savoring the silence on my end. Should have thought of that before naming her queen, I said, and ended the call without another word. The peace that followed, sublime. I sat down again and stared at the skyline. The city didn't care who ran Griffin Tech. The buildings kept rising. Deals kept churning. Innovation moved on with or without permission. My laptop pinged. A thread on Tech Sleuth had exploded. CEO Kimberly Griffin fumbles AI demo, Hartman terminates partnership. Comments below were ruthless. Yikes, Nepo CEO strikes again. Wasn't Liz Griffin the brains behind that AI division? I didn't reply. I didn't repost. But I took a screenshot. That afternoon, I took a walk through South Congress, watched startups buzzing with caffeine and ideas, past co-working spaces filled with people I used to mentor. I wasn't invisible here. I never had been. The Griffin name opened doors, but my execution kept them open. By nightfall, I was back in my rooftop bar, meeting Dana, an old Stanford friend and now partner at one of the cleanest VC firms in town. I heard, she said as we clinked glasses. Hartman's out. That's a collapse. I just shrugged. She never understood the tech. She memorized my DMOS like a script. Can't fake innovation, Dana replied. Nope, but they tried. We were silent for a minute. Tell me the truth, she said. You gonna fix it for them? I stared at my glass, thought of my father's voice, his desperation. No, I said, not for them, she smiled. But maybe for you, and I nodded. Maybe. The next morning started like the others, early espresso, inbox check, venture news. Except this time, there it was. Nestled between a venture capital digest and a discount code from a wine club I never remembered joining. Subject, please read this. Kimberly, I froze. Not because she wrote, but because of the tone. Kimberly didn't ask. She declared. She strutted. She posted vague inspirational quotes on Instagram stories and thought that passed for reflection. But this was raw. I clicked. Liz, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I deserve that. Maybe more than that. I messed up the Hartman demo. Completely. I didn't know what I was doing and I panicked and I tried to cover it with buzzwords and a smile like I always do, but it fell apart. I don't need a lecture. I already got that from Dad and from every shareholder breathing fire this week. I need help. I need you. There's a shareholder crisis meeting tomorrow. You don't need to come as family, just as a consultant. That's all I'm asking. My pride is shattered enough to say it. You were right. If you're willing, please. I read it 3 times. Then I sat back, staring at the screen. Somewhere in downtown Austin, Kimberly Griffin, the company's freshly crowned CEO, was unraveling. Not just in business, but in identity. And I should have been gloating. Instead, I felt skeptical. This could be a ploy, a pity trap, a guilt appeal dressed as surrender. Or it could be exactly what it looked like. A last-ditch cry from someone finally aware of how far out of her depth she really was. I didn't reply right away. I showered, thought, replayed every conversation we'd ever had in boardrooms, birthday parties, holidays where her gifts outshone mine but her understanding never did. And then I typed one line, my terms or no deal. I hit send. Less than 3 minutes later, a reply buzzed in. Send them. I'll sign anything. The control in that moment didn't feel like revenge. It felt like rebalancing the universe. For the first time in weeks, Kimberly wasn't smirking from a seat she didn't earn. She was asking, no, begging, for me to sit at the table again. Only this time it would be on my terms. I drafted a basic consulting agreement, added an NDA clause, included 0 affiliation to Griffin Tech's brand or legacy. I didn't want to be pulled into their PR crisis or painted as some savior. If I was going to help, it would be clean, limited, and surgical. I sent the contract over, and to my genuine surprise, she signed within the hour. The following day, I walked into a downtown hotel ballroom, neutral territory, wearing charcoal gray slacks, a white blouse, and my hair tied back in a bun sharp enough to cut glass. No Griffin name tag, no company lanyard, just my own reputation walking ahead of me. Kimberly was already there. She looked like a shadow of herself, blazer too stiff, under-eye concealer failing. When she saw me, she stood up quickly, like I might vanish if she blinked. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I gave a curt nod. "Where's the packet?" She handed me a thick folder, stapled reports, crash notes from the Hartman fallout, preliminary crisis responses drafted by marketing. "I haven't told anyone you're helping," she added. "Just that a consultant is coming to advise." "Smart," I said, already flipping through code versions and audit trails. "Keep it that way." I could feel her eyes on me as I scanned the documents, but I didn't look up. Something in the server logs caught my attention. I frowned. "Who's maintaining version control these days?" I asked. "Alan," she replied, hesitant. "Alan, the CTO. I hadn't thought about him in years, not since the last time I found him rewriting a dev sprint behind my back to please an investor. He was good, but careless. Smart, but slippery. And if rumors were still accurate, very close to Kimberly. I kept my face neutral, marked the code discrepancy with a sticky note. "I'll need full access to system archives and your internal IT chat logs." Kimberly blinked. "That's a lot of access." "I'm not here to soothe egos," I said calmly. "If you want this fixed, I need to know what went wrong and who knew it." She nodded slowly. "You'll have it." As I turned the page, I realized something. Kimberly didn't look like someone scheming. She looked like someone drowning. And maybe, for once, she knew I was the only one who could swim. The hotel ballroom buzzed faintly with the soft clicks of laptops, the shuffle of glossy papers, and the strained breathing of people trying to seem in control. But I didn't care about any of that. My focus was on the screen in front of me, on the rows of code scrolling faster than most eyes could follow. It had been 2 hours since I requested full access to Griffin Tech System archives, and Kimberly delivered. I almost admired her speed. Desperation, it turned out, was a powerful motivator. I was seated in the back corner of the ballroom, alone at a 6-foot table strewn with confidential reports and 2 laptops, theirs and mine. Most people in the room didn't even know who I was, and the ones who did were too embarrassed or afraid to speak to me. I preferred it that way. No distractions. Just the truth, and the truth was ugly. "Version 9342. I muttered, highlighting a segment of the AI response code. Flag override protocol wasn't just misconfigured, it was altered. That's when I saw it. A buried module deep in the chain of commands rerouted error signals into a false success loop, meaning anytime the AI failed to parse a query, it responded as if it had completed the request. It didn't just malfunction, it lied. I leaned back slowly, feeling the blood drain from my face. That kind of patch wasn't accidental. Someone tried to make the AI appear stable during testing, even if it wasn't. The only reason it would fail in a live demo was if it encountered a data pattern it couldn't fake its way through, something unique to Hartman's integration. It was sabotage, or worse, a cover-up gone sloppy. I switched tabs to the system logs. User, A. Harper timestamp, 4 nights before the Hartman demo. Alan. My gut twisted. I hadn't seen him in over a year, but now his name was glowing like a warning flare. I remembered how charming he could be in meetings, how easily he navigated tension with a smile and just enough jargon to impress the uninitiated, and how quickly he could turn truth into a half-lie and call it progress. I opened the internal IT chat logs. Kimberly had given me everything. I wasn't expecting to find anything useful in casual dev chatter, but there it was. Alan just need the demo to go clean. No more bugs, no more headaches. Alan, don't worry, she won't notice. I'll slip it in the night before, just makes the system look smoother. She meaning Kimberly. I stared at the timestamp. It aligned perfectly with the patch. I exhaled through my nose, steadying myself. So Alan had modified the AI code with a deceptive patch, told someone, not named in the logs, that he'd slip it in unnoticed, and then watched Kimberly walk into a $3 million demo with a time bomb. Either he had been trying to protect her or trying to protect himself, or both. But it didn't matter. I had what I needed. I opened my encrypted drive and saved screenshots of everything, code changes, logs, internal chats, all dated, all traceable. Kimberly approached quietly behind me. "You've been quiet," she said. "I work better that way," I replied. She hesitated. "Find anything." I turned slowly in my chair and held up a printout of the altered code. Her face went pale as she leaned in to read it. This isn't the version Alan gave me to approve." "No," I said. "This is the one he used." Her voice dropped. "You're saying he sabotaged the demo." "I'm saying he altered the AI's response behavior to make it appear more reliable than it was, and you didn't catch it." She took a step back, eyes scanning the paper like it might disappear if she blinked hard enough. "Why would he?" "Because you trusted him," I interrupted gently. "Too much. And because when people are scared of failure, they make reckless choices to keep the illusion alive." She didn't respond right away. Just stood there hugging herself like a child, as if the cold truth had dropped the room temperature 10 degrees. "What do we do?" she asked finally. I stood, collecting the documents. "I talked to Alan," I said. "Alone." Her eyes widened. "You'll confront him?" "No, I'll give him a chance to come clean." "And if he doesn't?" I looked her square in the eye. "Then I burn what's left of his reputation, and I do it with receipts." Kimberly swallowed hard. For once, she didn't try to perform strength or spin vulnerability into charm. She just nodded. As I walked out of the ballroom with a folder full of secrets, I felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not even pride. Control. Not the kind given to you with a title. The kind you take when no one else in the room knows what to do next. The cafe was tucked inside a co-working hub in East Austin, hidden behind tall succulents and exposed brick. The kind of place where startups were born on napkins and secrets changed hands over cortados. I chose a booth in the back, away from the main entrance. Neutral ground. No logos. No Griffin legacy clinging to the air like smoke. Alan arrived 10 minutes late, wearing the same forced charm he always had in tense moments. Relaxed shoulders, confident half-smile, the illusion of control. But his eyes flickered when he saw me. "Liz," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Didn't expect this call." "Really?" I sipped my espresso. "After the last week, you should expect quite a few." He chuckled, too casual. "Well, it's been eventful." I didn't return the smile. "I'll skip the warm-up, Alan. I found the patch, I saw the logs, and I read your chat messages." That wiped the grin off his face. He leaned back, arms folding slowly. "You've been digging." "I don't need to dig," I said, tapping the folder beside me. "The lies are barely buried. You pushed a deceptive code change into the demo build and hoped no one would notice. Until the AI collapsed in front of Hartman's entire board." He didn't speak. "You did it to smooth things over for Kimberly, didn't you?" I continued. "Or maybe you did it for yourself. Either way, it cost this company millions. And you gambled with software that was never yours to rewrite." Alan exhaled through his nose, leaning forward. "She wasn't ready," he said. "You know that. Everyone knows that." The AI was glitching in regression tests, and she didn't even understand what that meant. She thought running the stable build meant clicking the green button. "And instead of telling her the truth," I replied, "you rigged the system." His hands fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve. "I was trying to keep the company from tanking." "You were trying to keep yourself in position," I said. "You gambled on ignorance and hoped it would buy you another quarter." The silence between us was tight, heavy. He finally looked up. "What now?" I opened the folder, spread the screenshots out slowly, timestamps, commit logs, Slack chats. "This isn't just carelessness," I said. "It's manipulation, and if I wanted to, I could bury you in front of the entire board." He looked away, jaw tightening. "But," I added, "I'm not interested in burying people, not yet." That caught his attention. "What does that mean?" "It means I'll give you a choice," I said. "Come clean. Submit a full incident report, admit your part in the failure, and step down quietly with a letter of accountability. You'll keep your name, maybe even future consulting work. Or," he already knew the or, I didn't need to say it. "And Kimberly?" he asked. "She's already drowning," I said plainly. "This isn't about sparing her anymore, it's about the company, about cleaning house." He looked at the papers again, as if seeing them for the first time. "I never meant to hurt her," he said softly. "I thought I was helping." I believed him, but I didn't care. "Intent doesn't repair damage," I said. "Action does." Alan nodded, slow and bitter. "I'll write the letter tonight." I gathered the papers. "Send it to legal. I'll make sure the board sees it before they see this." I tapped the file, "and before Tech Sleuth sees anything at all." He gave a faint, dry laugh, still sharp as ever. I met his gaze. Sharper. We parted with no handshake, no promise of peace. Outside, the sun was dipping behind the skyline, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. I slipped on my sunglasses and walked slowly, deliberately, breathing in the clean victory of truth told on my terms. By the time I returned to my apartment, Kimberly had already texted. Kimberly, heard about Alan. What did you say to him? I stared at the screen. Then typed, the truth, just enough of it, because some truths didn't need to be shouted. Some were just planted quietly, left to grow until they overtook everything. And in this case, the roots were already sinking in deep. The Griffin Tech boardroom didn't look any different. Same glass walls, same skyline view, same sleek oak table that once felt like my second home and not long ago the scene of my betrayal. But today I didn't walk in wounded. I walked in ready. The room was full, shareholders, legal counsel, department heads. No empty chairs, no place to hide. Kimberly sat near the middle, pale and quiet, eyes flitting between me and her iPad. She didn't speak, not yet. I took my time walking to the head of the table. I didn't need to be introduced. Every eye in the room was already on me, some skeptical, others expectant. A few relieved. I laid down the folder, opened my laptop, and connected to the screen. I appreciate your time, I said simply, the calm in my voice cutting through the murmurs. Let's begin. I clicked to the first slide, a clean graph showing the Hartman contract's value over the last 3 quarters. 3 million lost. Investor confidence down, our stock volatile. I let the numbers speak first. Then I turned to the second slide. This, I said, highlighting a section of code, is what ran during the Hartman demo, an unauthorized patch inserted days before the launch. Gasps. Somewhere near the end of the table, someone muttered, "Oh no." I explained the behavior, how the code disguised failure as success, how it misrepresented product integrity, how it almost destroyed the credibility of our flagship AI platform. Then I switched to the internal Slack messages. Alan's name, his words. "That's real," one shareholder asked. "It's verified," I said. "Timestamped, backed by logs. He submitted a full admission to the board and has resigned effective immediately." I let that hang in the air. Alan wasn't the biggest piece on the board, but he'd been positioned close enough to the throne to do damage. And now, removed. But the real issue isn't Alan, I continued. It's leadership, or rather the lack of it. I looked at Kimberly, not accusing, not cruel, just factual. Kimberly was elevated to CEO without transition planning, mentorship, or technical fluency. She was handed the wheel of a rocket with no map. What happened wasn't just a demo failure. It was a structural collapse of accountability. A woman from finance raised her hand, cautious. "Are you suggesting a full leadership overhaul?" "I'm suggesting a correction," I replied. "The company needs direction, not from someone guessing in the dark, but from someone who built the foundation." The room stilled. One of the senior shareholders, Carl Brenner, a man who hadn't looked me in the eye in over a year, spoke up. "If not Kimberly, then who?" All eyes turned again. I closed the laptop, looked directly at him. "I'm not asking to be reinstated," I said, "unless this room believes I can lead, not just recover the company, but evolve it. The future of Griffin Tech shouldn't be defined by bloodlines or boardroom drama. It should be defined by execution, integrity, vision." Another shareholder chimed in, younger, sharper. "If we bring you in, Liz, what happens next?" "I stop the hemorrhaging," I said. "I rebuild Hartman's trust. I restore internal structure. And I make sure every corner of this company reflects what it was built to be: innovative, ethical, unstoppable." A pause. Then one by one, heads began to nod, until someone said the words I hadn't expected so soon. "Can you fix this?" And I nodded once, not dramatic, not arrogant, just certain. I already started. The vote didn't happen in that moment, not formally. But the shift in the room was undeniable. I felt it when the legal team began taking notes. I heard it in the quiet thank yous whispered as I walked out. Behind me, Kimberly remained seated. I didn't gloat. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. Outside the building, I leaned against a pillar and let the wind hit my face. Justice wasn't loud. It was steady. And it always made its way back around. I barely had time to let the boardroom adrenaline fade when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. For a second, I considered letting it ring out. I'd earned a quiet night after what I just pulled. But instinct said otherwise. Elizabeth Griffin, I answered. A low chuckle came through the line. Still sharp with the full name. My eyebrows lifted. David. Guilty. David Linwood, Hartman Robotics VP of Product Strategy, and more importantly, one of my closest friends from Stanford. We'd pulled all-nighters building AIs that could predict human emotion before it was trendy. He'd always been the clever one, the one with ideas too big for professors' rubrics. I hadn't heard from him in over a year. I heard about the demo, he said. Had to make sure it wasn't you on the kill switch. I laughed, dry and honest. It wasn't, but you already knew that. I did, he said. Still needed confirmation. There was a pause, then, I'm in Austin, you free. We met that night at a wine bar on Rainy Street. Dim lighting, old jazz on vinyl, the kind of place you go when you need to talk without the whole world listening. He looked the same. Sharp suit, no tie, thoughtful eyes that always seemed 2 moves ahead. You look good, he said, sliding into the booth. I look exhausted. Same thing in this industry. We clinked glasses, red for me, whiskey for him, and let the silence settle before he leaned in. You know why I'm here, right? Partially, I said. You're not one to fly out just for gossip. No, he agreed. But Hartman's watching Griffin Tech closely. A few of us at the top, we weren't thrilled to pull out. That was a tactical exit, not emotional. You mean you left a sinking ship, I said, unoffended. We left a captain who didn't know starboard from port, he corrected. But rumor is you're back. I nodded slowly. Consulting for now, but I've taken control of internal cleanup, code base, culture, and Alan's gone. He smiled at that. Good. Why are you telling me this? He leaned forward. Because if you're rebuilding, Hartman's interested again, not under Kimberly, under you. My glass froze halfway to my lips. You're serious. Deadly. David, this is a $3 million relationship you're talking about. And you're the only one I trust to lead it. He let the weight of that settle. But there's a condition, he added. I raised an eyebrow. Here it comes. Hartman comes back if you're CEO, not consultant. Not fractional leader. Real title, real power. Our executive team wants assurances, someone who knows the product, the market, and the stakes. I stared at him, breath caught between disbelief and calculation. You're asking me to take my sister's job officially. I'm not asking, I'm offering. You earned this, Liz. You always did. I sipped my wine, mind sprinting through what this would mean. If I said yes, the board would have to vote again. But this time, with a contract hanging in the balance. They couldn't afford to say no. Kimberly, she'd fight it. Or maybe she wouldn't. Maybe she'd already seen the writing on the wall. David waited patiently. Finally, I said, and if they resist? Then Hartman doesn't return, he said. Simple as that. His eyes locked with mine. But something tells me they won't. The offer sat between us like a loaded weapon, dangerous, powerful, and mine to wield. I'll give you an answer in 48 hours, I said. He nodded. But don't wait too long. The future's watching. As I walked back to my apartment that night, I didn't feel uncertain. I felt inevitable. The company that tried to cut me out was now relying on me to save them. And the irony, I hadn't even gotten started yet. The sky outside was all thunderclouds and tension, gray, unsettled, brewing. Fitting. Because inside the Griffin Tech boardroom, the atmosphere was even worse. We were only 15 minutes into the emergency session, and I could already feel the friction crawling up the walls. The storm hadn't just followed me here, it had arrived early. Kimberly sat at the far end of the table, her posture too stiff, hands trembling slightly as she flipped through her notes. Dad was beside her, jaw clenched so tightly you could hear his molars grinding. The rest of the board was tense, eyes darting between screens, documents, and me. They all knew why we were here, the Hartman deal, and my condition. I sat calmly in a chair I hadn't occupied in months, no title yet. But my presence held weight now, not because of bloodlines, because of leverage. I want to be clear, I said, folding my hands in front of me. This isn't a personal crusade, this is structural reality. Hartman is prepared to re-sign, but only under new leadership, specifically mine. Silence. One of the junior board members, new, trying to prove himself, spoke up. Do we have this in writing? I slid a single printed email across the table. David's confirmation, clear as glass. Dad looked like he might break something. You're using our mistake as an ultimatum, he said, voice low and sharp. No, I replied. I'm using your mistake to offer a solution. You already are the solution, Kimberly said suddenly, her voice cracking. You fixed the Allen mess, you saved us from further exposure, you consulted. Isn't that enough? I met her eyes. I don't fix systems I don't control, I said. You brought me in as a last resort. Now I'm offering a first step. She looked down, said nothing, and then Dad, he stood. Kimberly needs time, he said. This company can't throw her aside just because one deal fell through. Leadership takes time to learn. And yet, I said evenly, you gave her zero preparation, zero oversight, and full power overnight. That wasn't a learning opportunity. That was sabotage, just not the kind you're used to calling it. He stared at me. Do you want her to fail? I wanted her to learn. Failing without reflection isn't growth, it's collapse. Another board member cleared his throat. If we lose Hartman, we could see a cascade, Vixen Robotics, Plutarch, even Shima Tech. They're all watching. If this company doesn't stabilize soon, we won't have a legacy left to fight over. My father's voice rose. So we crown Elizabeth and pretend this never happened. No, I said, louder now. You acknowledge what happened, and then you course correct. Not because I want a throne, but because the company needs a leader who can navigate storms, not cause them. There was a beat, and then a voice I didn't expect. Kimberly, I resign. The words fell like glass on concrete. Everyone turned to her. I resign as CEO, she said again, more firmly this time. Not because I want to, because I was never prepared, because I was never allowed to fail privately, Dad. Her eyes were locked on him, and for the first time he had no words. I was handed power I didn't understand, expected to prove something without tools. And now I'm blamed for not building an empire out of smoke. Her voice cracked again, but she held her posture. I can't lead a company built on silent sabotage and blame. I'm stepping down. She rose, gathered her things, and left the room without another word. No one stopped her. Dad sat down, visibly shaken, hands trembling slightly as he stared at the empty seat where she'd been. The silence was raw. Then someone at the table, an investor I barely knew, said what the room had been circling for weeks. So, Elizabeth, what's your first move as CEO? I blinked. It wasn't official yet, but it was inevitable. I stood slowly. My first move, I echoed. Restoration, clarity, we stabilize, we lead, and we never confuse family loyalty with corporate strategy again. They nodded. No one questioned it, and outside the glass walls, the storm finally broke. The vote passed, unanimously. There was no ceremony, no applause, just a signed contract, a new placard on the table, and a few wary nods as I was named CEO of Griffin Tech. Officially. I left the boardroom with a calm face and a firestorm underneath. This wasn't the ending, it was a reset, and everyone knew it. The next morning, I stepped into headquarters for the first time since the fallout. Not as a guest, not as a consultant, as the one thing they tried to erase me from. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor, and for a moment everything looked the same. Polished floors, frosted glass, familiar faces, but the air had shifted. Some employees glanced up, startled. Others quickly looked away. A few smiled, 2 even clapped, but most watched, like they weren't sure if I'd come to lead or burn the whole place down. My new assistant, a sharp woman named Taryn, early 30s, former operations lead, met me at the front with a tablet in hand. Morning, Liz, she said, using the name I preferred. Office is prepped, email access restored, and I took the liberty of setting up private HR reviews for next week. I liked her already. We walked the floor together, past the dev team, the UX pods, the data lab where I used to spend long nights with whiteboards and red pens. Some people nodded, a few muttered greetings, but I could feel the tension swirling beneath it all. Word is spreading fast, Taryn said, lowering her voice. The Allen thing, the boardroom vote, some departments feel sideswiped. I expected that. There's talk in engineering, she continued, that you're back for revenge, not leadership. I stopped walking. From whom? She hesitated. You want names? No, I want honesty. She lowered the tablet slightly. There's fear. People weren't consulted. They saw Kimberly ousted and Allen vanish in the span of a week. The power shift felt violent. They don't know where they stand. That word, violent, stuck to my ribs. I nodded slowly. I get it. We resumed walking. I didn't defend myself. I didn't correct the record, because fear doesn't care about facts. It only cares about survival. Inside my new, well-old corner office, sunlight poured in like it had something to prove. The desk was pristine. A framed quote still hung on the far wall. "Lead like your reputation depends on the quiet moments." It was mine. I'd picked it 5 years ago when this room first became mine before it was taken. I sat, opened my inbox, dozens of new messages, internal teams, shareholder inquiries, press requests, a draft statement from PR titled, "The Return of Elizabeth Griffin." I closed it. The return wasn't the story was what came next. Mid-morning, Taryn poked her head in again. "You've got company," she said, unannounced. I raised an eyebrow. Before I could respond, the door opened wider and 2 senior engineers stepped inside. One I recognized, Milo, back-end systems architect. Brilliant, introverted, and fiercely loyal, but not always to the same person twice. "Elizabeth," he began, cautious. "Milo," I said, "come in." The second engineer, Jasmine, younger, newer, stood with arms crossed. "We wanted to speak off record," Jasmine said. "About morale." I gestured to the chairs. "Go ahead." They didn't sit. "There's unease," Milo said. "You already know that. Some of us feel like we don't know who this company belongs to anymore." "It belongs to the mission," I replied evenly. "It always has." Jasmine folded her arms tighter. "Easy to say when you're in charge again." I didn't flinch. "I'm not here to erase what happened. I'm here to make sure it never happens again." "Words," she said. I stood slowly, meeting her gaze. "Then hold me to them." They left after that, still uncertain, but slightly less guarded. Taryn returned shortly after. "You handled that well," she said. "I didn't handle it," I said. "I lived it." The real challenge wasn't retaking power. It was proving I could use it better than the people who stole it from me. The gala was held at the Palladium, a downtown monument to polished excess, where glass staircases met chandeliers the size of small cars. It was Griffin Tech's annual investor event, and this year every eye would be on me. The prodigal daughter turned CEO. The headline practically wrote itself. Taryn walked beside me as we stepped out of the town car. We confirmed media attendance, Tech Times, Business Bulls, even a whisper that Forbes might show. "And Kimberly?" I asked. "No RSVP, but she hasn't returned her badge either." I nodded, adjusting the cuff of my black silk blazer. Clean lines, no embellishments. The message was deliberate. No distractions. I didn't come to sparkle. I came to sign the deal. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with curated opulence, golden lighting, branded cocktail napkins, hushed conversations brimming with billion-dollar tension. Familiar faces drifted through the crowd. Some smiled too tightly. Others avoided my eyes completely. The Griffin Tech banner hung over the stage. Just below it, a long table for signatories centered around the evening's crown jewel, the Hartman contract. David arrived shortly after I did. He looked around, nodding with approval. "Not bad," he murmured. "Almost makes me forget last quarter." "Almost," I echoed. He held up a slim folder, his signed side of the agreement. "You ready?" I took a deep breath. "Let's make it official." We moved to the stage. As we signed, camera shutters clicked like 1,000 tiny hammers. Applause erupted, not thunderous, but solid, real. David stood, shook my hand, and leaned in. "This is your moment, own it." He walked off stage. I turned to the microphone. "I'd like to say a few words," I said. The room quieted. "I know there's been speculation about what happened, about what's next. Tonight, let me answer with this. Griffin Tech isn't rebuilt by entitlement. It's rebuilt by truth." I paused. Let that sink in. We lost our way because we forgot who we were. But tonight marks a return, not just for me, but for the values we once promised and failed to protect. I scanned the crowd, saw nods, saw clenched jaws, saw understanding. Then my eyes caught on a silhouette near the back, my father. He wasn't near the press, he wasn't near the stage, just standing in the shadows, no smile, no anger, just silence. And beside him, barely visible, was Kimberly. She looked hollow, not angry, not proud, not even jealous, just gone. They didn't stay long. I watched them exit together, the doors closing behind them like punctuation. The night continued, champagne, handshakes, reporters angling for quotes. But my mind stayed with that image. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel revenge. I felt the weight of it all. Leadership didn't taste like glory. It tasted like responsibility. And now the real work would begin. 3 weeks later, the buzz had dimmed. The gala was history, the headlines had cooled, and Griffin Tech had settled into the kind of quiet that only follows a storm. But for me, the work was just beginning. The office felt different now, not lighter, not louder, but cautious. Like a space still holding its breath, waiting to see who I'd become now that I had the power they once denied me. Maya, our HR lead, stepped into my office just after 9, holding 2 coffees and a thick binder labeled Transparency Initiative. She was calm, smart, someone who had survived more CEOs than I cared to count. "You're really doing it," she said as she sat. "Starting from the ground up." "I don't see another way," I replied, flipping open the binder. "You can't just slap on a new logo and pretend the rot wasn't there." "Where do you want to start?" "Hiring policy," I said. "No more friends of friends skipping vetting, no more silent retaliation. I want blind recruitment where it counts and mandatory bias training that actually holds weight." She smiled. "You've thought about this." "I lived this," I said. "I was this, the exception, the legacy placement." And when I lost my title, no one questioned the process, because they assumed I had never earned it. Maya's smile faded, replaced by something deeper: respect. We spent the next hour workshopping language, redlining old clauses, rewording culture statements that sounded like they belonged in corporate fortune cookies. By the time we finished, I felt something I hadn't in months: stability. That afternoon, I visited the lower floors, product, customer success, even the intern pod. No cameras. No fanfare, just questions. Listening, asking what wasn't working, what could be better. And for the first time, they told me. Small things, outdated tools, unclear onboarding, passive-aggressive leadership pockets that made collaboration feel like warfare. Nothing flashy, but everything real. One product manager said, "I didn't think you'd care about what we think." I looked her in the eye. "That's the version of me they told you to expect, not the one I built." And that's what it all came down to in the end. Not rebuilding a company, rebuilding trust. Rebuilding a reputation not just with investors or the media, but with the people who made the company breathe. Weeks passed. Our numbers stabilized. Hartman returned. Other partners reached out, some cautiously, some enthusiastically. But what mattered most wasn't the growth chart. It was the email I got one morning from an anonymous employee. "You don't know me, but I've worked here 5 years and I've never felt safer than I do right now. Whatever you're doing, keep going. We see you." I didn't forward it. I didn't screenshot it. I just read it twice, then closed my laptop and stared out the window. The skyline looked a little different now, like something earned, like something saved. 1 year later, I stood on the cover of Tech Forward beside the headline, "The CEO Who Rewired a Legacy." In the panel interview, they asked me what my family taught me about business. I smiled and answered without hesitation. "Family taught me 2 things: how to rise and how to rebuild." The audience clapped, but I didn't hear applause. I heard peace.